At some point, almost everyone hears this sentence. Once both of you are working, money won't be a problem anymore. It sounds reasonable. 2 salaries should mean comfort, stability, breathing room. And yet, when you look around, something feels off. You see couples earning more than their parents ever did, yet constantly anxious about money. You see households with 2 full-time incomes still living paycheck to paycheck. You see stress, not relief. Bills get paid, but security never quite arrives. So here's the uncomfortable question no one likes to ask. If 2 incomes are supposed to make life easier, why do so many 2-income households feel poorer than ever? This isn't about irresponsibility or bad choices. It's not about people doing things wrong. It's about a system that quietly reshapes spending, risk, and expectations the moment a second income enters the picture, often without anyone noticing it happening. Let's picture a very ordinary situation in the US or Europe. 2 people in their late 20s or early 30s, both educated, both employed. One earns around $55,000 a year, the other earns about $45,000. On paper, that's a $100,000 household income. By historical standards, that's comfortably middle class, maybe even edging into upper middle class. They rent a decent apartment reasonably close to work. Not luxurious, just practical. They each have a car, because in most places commuting without one simply isn't realistic. On weekends, they go out occasionally. They take a short vacation once or twice a year. They keep pace with friends who live similar lives. Nothing extravagant, nothing reckless, just what most people would describe as a normal modern lifestyle. And yet, every month, the account balance feels tighter than expected. Savings grow slowly. Unexpected expenses feel unsettling. Most telling of all, the idea of one person stepping back from work, even temporarily, feels financially impossible. This is where the 2-income trap begins to quietly take shape. Let's slow down and do some very simple math. That $100,000 household income doesn't arrive as $100,000. Once federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, healthcare contributions, and pensions are taken out, the number often shrinks to somewhere between $70,000 and $75,000, sometimes less depending on where you live. Suddenly, the picture changes. Instead of 2 incomes feeling like abundance, they begin to feel like obligation. Because the household budget is no longer built around survival. It's built around maintaining 2 paychecks. Rent is chosen assuming 2 incomes will always be there. Cars are financed with the same assumption. Daily spending quietly adjusts to the idea that both people must keep earning, continuously and without interruption. The second income doesn't create flexibility, it creates dependence. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because the system nudges households to organize their lives around the highest possible income, not the most resilient one. This is where the system tightens, quietly. With 2 incomes, landlords and banks offer more, not because it's safer, but because it's larger. A 1-income household might choose a modest apartment. A 2-income household is encouraged to stretch just a little higher. An extra bedroom, a nicer neighborhood, a shorter commute. Each upgrade feels reasonable on its own, almost responsible. But together, they raise the household's fixed costs permanently. Rent and mortgage payments stop being flexible. They demand consistency. They assume both incomes will always be there. And once fixed costs rise, financial resilience slowly disappears. There's less room for error, less room for rest. The household becomes efficient, optimized for income, but surprisingly fragile underneath. Now add transportation. 2 full-time jobs usually mean 2 cars, 2 insurance policies, 2 maintenance schedules, 2 fuel bills. Then come the quieter expenses that rarely get questioned. Credit cards used to smooth cash flow, student loans that never fully went away, phones, subscriptions, work clothes, convenience spending. None of this feels reckless. It feels like adulthood. But here's the detail most people miss. Many of these costs exist because both people must work. They're not just lifestyle choices, they're work support costs. The second income doesn't only add money, it also adds expenses that only make sense if that income continues uninterrupted. And once those expenses are in place, stepping off the treadmill becomes far harder than expected. The mistake isn't having two incomes. For many households, two incomes are necessary. The real mistake is quietly designing a life that requires both incomes at all times. When that happens, income stops being upside. It stops being optional. It becomes dependency. There's no margin, no buffer, no room to adjust. If one person loses a job, burns out, gets sick, or simply wants to step back for a while, the entire structure begins to shake. That's why many two-income households feel more financially stressed than households with less money on paper. They're optimized for earning, not for resilience. Everything works as long as both paychecks arrive on time. But the moment something changes, pressure replaces stability. Not because anyone made a reckless decision, but because the system quietly encouraged optimization over flexibility. This isn't about intelligence. Plenty of smart, capable people fall into the two-income trap. It's about psychology. Humans adapt quickly to new normals. When income rises, expectations follow almost automatically. We anchor our sense of reasonable to the people around us. We compare sideways to friends, coworkers, neighbors, not backwards to previous generations. So when two people earn well, the question rarely becomes, do we actually need this? Instead, it becomes, why wouldn't we? The system reinforces this thinking. Banks approve larger loans, employers assume constant availability, society quietly normalizes higher fixed costs, and slowly, without a single dramatic decision, financial optionality disappears. Nothing feels wrong in the moment, nothing feels excessive, but flexibility erodes, almost invisibly. Over time, the consequences compound. Savings stay thinner than expected, career choices narrow, risk-taking becomes uncomfortable. People remain in jobs they don't enjoy because the household can't afford uncertainty. Switching roles feels dangerous, taking time off feels irresponsible. Burnout becomes common, flexibility becomes rare. Ironically, two incomes meant to provide safety can quietly reduce freedom. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually. Year after year, the household becomes more efficient and less adaptable, more productive and less resilient. And because the change happens slowly, it's rarely noticed until stress becomes a permanent background noise. Financially intelligent households don't obsess over earning more. They focus on reducing dependence. They think in terms of margin, not maximums. They ask different questions, not to restrict life, but to protect flexibility. What expenses truly must exist? How long could we function if one income disappeared? Which choices create room to breathe rather than pressure to perform? They see income as temporary, not guaranteed. They value slack more than status, resilience more than optimization. This isn't about sacrifice or austerity, it's about optionality. Because the real advantage of money isn't comfort, it's the ability to adapt when life changes. The two-income trap isn't a moral failure, it's a structural one. Two incomes can be powerful, but only when they buy freedom, not obligation. The moment a household needs both incomes just to stand still, stress becomes permanent. Understanding this doesn't require drastic changes or dramatic decisions. It starts with clarity. When you see the system clearly, you stop blaming yourself. You stop assuming something is wrong with you, and instead, you begin making quieter, smarter choices, ones that prioritize flexibility over appearance. If this perspective helped you see money a little more clearly, consider liking the video or subscribing, not for motivation, just for better thinking.